Okay. Welcome back, those of you who were gone for a while. Um, Last week we had a guest lecture, Henry Rosemont, who talked about translation, interpretation, and some Confucian spiritual ideas. And tonight we're back to Hanshan. And we're going to finish up on, well, for now we're going to finish up on this passage that it's been particularly difficult not only to translate but to understand. So we're going to conclude on the use of mantra, or his discussion on mantra tonight. So if we're looking at the text, we're at the, you should silently recite the mantra. Is that right? So just to catch everybody up, although Hanshan was primarily a scholar practitioner in that he studied the text and the teachings, was very erudite in them, but believed that the text and the teachings were merely guidelines or maps for self-cultivation, a direct experience of awakening. So he used them back and forth. During his lifetime, he was also noted for his meditation, sitting meditation practice. Spent a lot of time in seclusion and isolation, up in the high mountains, sometimes through the snowy winters, applying what he had learned in the text to the actual laboratory experience of cleansing the mind. So in the process of this, and what I'm trying to present to you is a theory, if you will, or a framework with which to understand some of the more elusive aspects of this teaching. And these go into what is called the secret school, or the use of these mantras. So in this exploration, he himself started to go into dimensions that were not just obvious to his ordinary perception, but became more and more obvious as he quieted his mind, as he stilled his nature, and as his mind began to let go of ordinary attachments, ordinary discursive clingings to external phenomena. As he did this, another world, if you will, I'm using this all as language because it truly isn't from his point of view another world, but a world not ordinarily visible to him started to appear. And in this world that he's talking about here tonight, it's sometimes called secret, and I'll explain why it's called that. It's very different in some ways than the world that we normally associate with our conscious mind, our will, and our intellect. Which is to say that from the Buddhist, I'm using small b here, or the Buddha frame of mind, the awakened mind, the mind is really a wondrous phenomena. It's deep, it's vast, it's rich, it pervades, it is ability to know everything. Texts describe it as a complete, unencumbered, liberated, unbound state of perfect seeing, understanding, knowing. So this is that capacity. And what Hanshan is talking about tonight is when that capacity continues to grow and expand, it just quite naturally becomes aware of these other dimensions. We gave some examples, superficial or simple examples. The world of animals, we talked about this a couple lectures ago, how different animals are aware of and perceive different realities than we do through either ultrasound or subsonic, through perception, through their eyes of the different range of light and color on the spectrum from ultraviolet and so forth. I think we did sight, sounds, we did smells, the world of pheromones, and so on and so forth. What else did we do? Sight, sound, smells, taste is one. Of course, kinesthetics, the realm of sensibility and neurons and what's available to us. So what natural science describes to us is the human beings have a realm within which they operate. given the extent and the limitations of our sense organs, we perceive a certain, quote, reality. And we often mistake that for everything there is. But we know just from our ordinary scientific research that this is just one dimension of a much larger world. We also know that, for example, as we sit here, there's just all kinds of sound waves going through the air that right now, I hope, since you've got your devices turned off, you are not picking up on. I'm talking about radio waves, the things that make your iPhones and iPads work, things that radio and television get broadcast. That's all going through the air. It's going through the building right now. There's all kinds of entities passing through our bodies right now in terms of physics, in terms of electrons and so forth. You all know about this, right? That's how you get cancer if you sit in the sun too long, because you're radiating your body. You're literally soaking up, and the rays are going right through it. So we're very porous. We know this is all happening, and yet we sort of tune it out and concentrate on the narrow reality that's within our immediate sense range and our sense of a self and what belongs to the self. So stretching that a little bit, we also know that the communication, if you will, between beings or entities across the species vary. Some can understand each other, some can't. Human beings can and cannot seem to understand each other. Hence we have diplomacy, which fails, and marriage counselors that would do their best to, try to get communication facilitating when people can't communicate. But even across cultures, language varies. And so if you learn a number of languages, you get to understand and listen to people in a language different than your own. Now, how many of you know a foreign language? And don't say English. A foreign language other than English. See how polite I was? Okay. So, did you always know that language? No. So what language do you know? Spanish. And you were born speaking Spanish? No. Do you remember hearing Spanish for the first time and going, huh? What is that?
I still go, huh, sometimes.
Okay. So we still go, huh. But at least you go, huh, and then sometimes, ah. Okay. So if you can imagine the first time you heard that foreign language, it was just total nonsense, gobbledygook. But with study and practice and immersion, perhaps even visiting, you start to see that, wow, this whole world of meaning, ideas, images, and so forth is alive, and now it's no longer, quote, foreign to you. So in the same way, what I'm suggesting as a way of framing this, what Han Chan is talking about here, what the texts are talking about, because the Buddhist texts cover a range of what we might describe as the understanding of the mind in all its various states. All Buddhist sutras, all the teachings, all the commentaries are basically trying to focus on the understanding, the unpacking, the expanding of this mind, the nature of this mind that is at the heart of our being. So if we can get to where at certain points the world of this mind starts to include and be aware of these other realms of spiritual beings, if you want to use, again, the language that they don't want to use because they don't see them as distinct beings from us. In fact, one of my teachers once said, I asked the question, are we people, how did I put it, more complex than just our bodies, and that we might actually have some spiritual essence, or I didn't say soul or something like that. And he said, you could say that we are temporarily the house of some spiritual, but he said from the other point of view, you could see it from, there are spiritual beings who temporarily take shape in bodies. So you reverse it. Instead of saying, do I temporarily have a spiritual being, reverse it and say, no, we're spiritual beings who just temporarily occupy these bodies, like a hotel or an inn. Okay? Another metaphor from the sutra. So in the Sixth Patriarch, Sixth Patriarch says, we are in fact total spiritually beings. We are potential Buddhas, and we temporarily occupy this body. So again, perspective shifts on how we look at this. So that being said, what Han-chan is saying about this passage and the use of mantras is that these represent another kind of language. This is another language, like a foreign language to us, that communicates among some of these different realms, these spiritual realms, okay? So now this language is different than, say, Spanish or my poor attempt to learn Chinese. They're actually phrases or sounds, words or phrases of sounds, and their primary meaning is not cognitive. You all know what I mean by cognitive? Like language is cognitive. We use it through our sense organs to understand different meanings, ideas, okay? It has a cognitive. We use our eyes, our ears, and our brain to process and interpret language and metaphors. But these are not primarily cognitive. For want of a better word, they're spiritual and they're beyond sort of our linguistic apparatus. Even Noam Chomsky is not going to wrap his head around these mantras because they don't define themselves by all those standards of rules. This is a different. Primarily, they're sound-based, and they activate something deep in the consciousness that's beyond the cognitive, ordinary, intellectual mind. So let's just leave it like that it's some kind of language that works at this level. And so when you learn a mantra, when you recite a mantra, it can have the effect of opening a communication channel with these realms of beings that to us seem distant until awakening starts to happen. You realize they're not distant. Let me stretch your mind a little bit by something that stretched my mind, which is the Avatamsaka Sutra. Some of you heard about the Avatamsaka Sutra? It's a tiny little sutra of basically 3 pages. Yeah, thank you for laughing. It's like the king of sutras. It's bigger than the LA phone book, even at 10-point font. It's just a massive text, and it's the most complete, thorough, mind-blowing, I would say, description of the world, the worlds, the whole cosmological reality, and also very specifically about the path, the mind and heart of the Bodhisattva. So it has 2 dimensions to it. But in the cosmogony of the Avatamsaka, and the reason I say this is because I met about 3 physicists since I draw near to Buddhism. And every time I describe texts that describe things, every one of them gravitates to the Avatamsaka. Because they see the Avatamsaka as another theory or another framework to understand matter and energy that is close to what they're exploring on the edges of experimental physics, particularly quantum and post-quantum. So they're very interested in this ancient description that precedes science by thousands of years, nonetheless has very interesting, tantalizing descriptions of the nature of how the physical world works in relationship to, ready, consciousness. Okay? Now, if you think this is far out physics, you should realize that physics now is really looking into and trying to understand the nature of consciousness as this continuum of matter and energy. But that being said, what the Avatamsaka then describes is a world, is a reality, where all the 10 realms, you know what the 10 realms? I've used this before. I don't want to get too technical, but there is a continuation of being from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas at the highest stage of perfection, down through the realm of gods, asuras, people, and then into the realms of animals, ghosts, and so forth. So there's 10 of these running a continuum. And they're not distinctly separate, but actually along a line of a spectrum of possibilities that one could become, that human life could transform either way into, or life could transform into these 10 realms. Okay, so All the 10 realms, according to the Avatamsaka, are mutually, simultaneously, right now, intersecting, interacting, interfused without any obstruction whatsoever. In this own space that we're occupying here, those 10 realms coexist. Mutually coexist. Pratitya samyutpada. Mutually interpenetrating. Co-arising. Now you're saying, where? Show them to me. Oh, there. Oh, no, there. Because we look and cannot see, we listen and cannot hear, is a statement from the Lotus Sutra that says, unless the minds are pure, unless the minds are focused, if you could say, you're not going to see or hear or perceive this. Nonetheless, if you focus and purify the mind, it'll become, the Buddha said, as obvious as an apple in the palm of your hand. No longer like, I imagine, whoa. You know, it's not like that at all. It's actually, oh, and they say, thus. That's how it is. So now I'm just throwing this out as theory. Not only do they say that all these realms mutually intersect, that there isn't this world and another world. There's just a fabric of reality that is continuous, unbroken, mutually interpenetrating, in the here and now. And the only difference of we being there or not being there is a measure of our consciousness or the limitations of our consciousness, not about some sort of, what is it? Beam me up, Scotty. What is that? That's Star Trek, you know, traveling, that you got to get into something and do warp speed to go someplace else. It's right here and now, but we only see it partially. Now, in this description as well, is a description of the natural world that consists not only of these 10 realms, but also various spirits of water, of grass, of trees, of the forest, of the meadows, of the mountains. There's a world that's rich with these spiritual beings, and that part of what ancient religions, if you will, had to do with was trying to negotiate and communicate with those beings that to some extent exercise a dominion over the various elements of nature. So the Avatamsaka says, when people act according to the best in their nature and are in harmony with the natural world, then all things go well and the spirits in turn respond, and there's an environment, if you will, of harmony. However, if through our karma we start to mess with this in terms of deforesting areas or ripping up the earth for precious metals and so on and so forth, not only do we harm the earth, but we can aggravate the spirits that abide in these places. We're messing up their space where they live. And they're not above anger. So, I mean, I'm describing these. You can say, oh, boy, this guy's really out of it tonight. Must be the spores in the air. Could be those questionable mushrooms I had for lunch. No. This is a description. Now, you can take it or leave it. I'm just saying, look at the description. Now, what Hanshan is then going into, he's saying, in the meditation practice, one can get to this stage where you're in touch with this or you want to avail yourself of this. So he says, when you reach a certain point in your meditation that you're having difficulties and you can't break through them, either through your conscious intellect or will, you can use this mantra. Simply recite the mantra of the mind, which is actually redundant, but we'll go back to that, which invokes the Buddha's mysterious seal. Now we get the word mysterious and seals in quotation marks to eradicate obstacles, because all the secret mantras of the Buddha's Vajra mind seal. Holding the mantra means to recite it. It doesn't mean to actually physically hold it. So you recite it. Often you recite it from memory. So part of the practice of not just monks and nuns, but people who are getting more serious about their practice, is they memorize certain parts of text as a contemplative exercise, but also as an exercise in absorbing the teachings. But they also memorize these mantras. So as the young novice monks, young compared to, as the young novice monks get ready to go for ordination, they're memorizing mantras, right? And you got them all down. More or less, see? So he's got to memorize Shrangama mantra, which is a bear of a mantra. It's really long. And then Great Compassion mantra, and then 10 itsy-bitsy ones, like 10 small mantras and so forth. And this becomes part of His daily cultivation is reciting these mantras in, systematic ways. So you can say, I don't get it. Yes? So this mantra, he's saying for daily exercise when leaving the monastery, before the meal, after the meal, when going out. There are exercises of these mantras that you recite to keep you mindful where you are, but also to keep you mindful of the space that you're entering and having compassion for living beings. For example, one mantra we used to recite was when you take a glass of water, when you take a drink of water. You don't just say, well, I'm thirsty, go down. If you're a Buddhist monk, you got to pause. You wonder why they're pausing. They're pausing to say, in this glass of water, there are thousands and thousands of living beings. I now take this water to nourish my body, but I compassionately hope that these living beings will eventually become Buddhas or something to that effect. And then you recite the mantra. So you're thinking, wow, superstition, man. But did you ever look at water under a microscope? It's floating with living beings. So in a sense, you could say, well, this is not scientific, or you could say it is, or it's another kind of science. But anyway, these are the mantras that go to this daily use. And what you're doing, mantra just means, my Sanskrit's not great, but man comes from, means mind, like manas. Remember, we have the consciousnesses, and manas is mind, and tra is Sanskrit for tool or implement, like a technology. So basically, mantra just means mind tools or mind technologies. Okay? These are tools that the mind uses directly that isn't necessarily language, but has sound to it. And these are, in a sense, power tools, if you will. But later on, we're going to see why you don't want to use them as power tools. So the secret part of this then, and you see the secret and mysterious, this is really, I don't know how to translate it, because we're just going to translate it as secret. I would choose to put that in italics or underline it too, because it doesn't mean that this is some, like, after he's done here, he goes into a little room where they have candles, right? And they do some things, and then they get a secret initiation into the secret society, with their little pins and things like this, and nobody else knows what happens. That's not what secret means here. It's not like you're initiated in some elite secret society, and we've had a lot of those throughout history. What secret means is the way that this works is not obvious. It's mysterious. Mysterious to the ordinary mind, that you can't explain it through rational discourse. The intellect say, oh, the mantra works this way, and we're going to do a controlled double-blind study on mantras to see how they work. Rather, it's talking about, it is in fact, I'll offer this, that Hanshan will say this, and so do the texts say this. It is scientific in the sense that it is intersubjectively testable and affirmable, but not through the normal variable process that we consider to be extensions of sense organs and so forth. So it's not like, oh, you have your experience, and then you recite something else, and you have that experience. No, it's uniform. But it's not accessible through that particular form of testing. It's another kind of testing. And this is what Zhengming means when you certify, or the mind seal means that you have tested it. So the seal means you've affirmed this experience. So it's called secret because how it works is not obvious, but it does work. And mostly it's also secret because it cannot be known except through the direct experience of it. And this is what the Avatamsaka says. These states that are associated with the enlightened mind can be experienced, but they can't be explained. They can be directly known, but they can't be explicated in ordinary language. So it's saying it's universal, it's available, but it's just not accessible to that. Okay, so he's saying, recite the mantra. My teacher used to say, you know it through your own experience. In the same way, if you drink water, you know whether it's warm or cold. Now, you look at the water, you can't tell necessarily. But as soon as you put it to your lips, you yourself know, is this cold, is this warm? And in the same way, that's how mantras affirm what they're doing. Now, let's go on to the text here. He says, all of the Buddhas use this. They say it can become a pestle for crushing all things it encounters into dust. Metaphor, okay? Metaphor. This is not an X-ray bomb, thing. I just saw the Navy now has developed. Gosh, when I was a kid, we used to watch Captain Video. And Captain Video was a silly guy in Los Angeles. He used to wear tights. And I think it was silly at the time. I thought it was real. And they run around this studio and they flew spaceships. You never saw this. You get inside the spaceship, it's rocking back and forth, and then Captain Video comes out and he's on another planet. And it wasn't different than the cowboy movies and themes. Pretty much the same. Go to another planet, go to another country, meet the bad guys, defeat the bad guys, good triumphs over evil, meet the girl, lose the girl, get the girl back, blah, blah, blah. But it was in outer space with Captain Video. And he would take out his guns, which looked like, what's that kind of flute you play that looks like a potato? Ocarina or something? Ocarina. They look like ocarinas. And when they shot, it wasn't bullets, but it was these rays. Psst. And you're ducking the rays, and the rays would go, and they'd be busting things all around, and it was dodging the rays. So I just saw the Navy now has a ray gun. And the ray gun is a laser light, and it can shoot it out. It's just like a ray from the Captain Video. And it'll take things out of the sky, dismantle radar systems. So we're rather ready. Captain Video has become a reality. Anyhow, I'm digressing. Where was I? Crushing all things. So this is not Captain Video's ray gun that crushes all things. It means it eliminates obstacles, impediments that are largely psychological, emotional, that we become attached to. And so it has the effect of breaking through those obstacles or impediments. Means, you could say, breaks the chains. Or in some cases, breaks the hold that other beings might have. For example, with sickness. If somebody's sickness is caused by this karmic thing that's going on, these mantras can effectively change the arrangement in the room, so to speak. Change who's there, who gets in and who doesn't. I'm using language here, okay? If there's obstacles or impediments because of the way we've done things karmically that obstruct the natural environment, then sometimes these mantras can reestablish the order of the natural environment, can restore a wholesome goodness to it. I'll illustrate this in a minute. So these mantras then work in this way to break these obstacles, and it says all the Buddhas use these. Now, the next passage of text says, thus it is said, through reciting the mantra of the mind, the Tathagatas, a Tathagata is another name for a fully enlightened being, a Buddha. Okay? It literally means one thus come. Or thus being as one it really is, totally in accord with the nature of reality. All of them realize, and the 10 directions, which mean everywhere, realize perfect enlightenment through using mantras. The Buddha clearly said this. Now we have a footnote. Is a footnote up there? Or is it just a one? Okay, so our research group on Thursday night is really good. And they went and researched this. So this line where it says the Buddha said is actually from the Shurangama Sutra. So that's what the footnote tells you. And the mantra here, we're guessing, and it makes sense to me, is the heart mantra from the Shurangama mantra. Okay? So, that's very short. Now, is that a secret? Yes, it is. And I'm willing to give you that secret. PayPal? No, it's not a secret. It's recited every night at the way places. So if you want to learn it, just hang around afterwards. And we used to circumambulate at night before we went to bed, and we recite this mantra 108 times. Okay? Well, I don't know. You do it at night here? Oh, you just did it. So he did it early. Okay. So the Buddha clearly says this. Now he gives a caveat. He says, nonetheless, even though the Buddha says this, the patriarchs and their disciples over time, out of concern it would be misused for just worldly ends, do not explicitly talk about it. In other words, the mantras, although they work, and if you're sincere, and most importantly, if you're pure in the precepts, in other words, if your ethical life is correct, then when you use these, they can be in a response, even though it's secret in the sense that it's not obvious how it works. There can be an efficacious response. But people, by their very natures, wanting to have, to control, and to get power, use and try to use these mantras in a way that affects either personal aggrandizement of power or the acquisition of material things. So I'm just saying, I've seen this. I didn't believe this until I went to Asia with my teacher, and I saw the various ways that mantras and these chants or dharanis can be used by people to harm, and to seek for worldly wealth and power and so forth. We were talking about this, and this isn't just in Buddhism. You'll find this across traditions. So the word mantra dharani works across many of the spiritual traditions, including Christian and Catholic. Okay, so regardless of your religious persuasion, just drop it and say, it seems that in the phenomena of what the spiritual is, the discussion, the discourse, and the recognition of these things is universal. There's variations of how it's translated and used and so forth. So, that being the case, they don't talk about it explicitly. Now, the next line, and I'm going to save this for next week, is a really important one. And the reason I'm going to save it for next week is because there wouldn't be enough time to do service to it, but I want you to look at it anyhow and think about it. It is not that you do not have use of it. In other words, although they don't talk about it, and although you may memorize it and use it, it's not the case that you shouldn't use it. But the use of it requires daily practice over a long period of time to become proficient with it. Again, just like a foreign language. Okay, you can study the language, but the real test is whether you can go to that country and communicate. I studied Chinese. I felt I was pretty good. My first trip to Asia, I was really in need of soap to wash my clothes, and I communicated it perfectly. And the perfect person at the temple brought me white powder soap. No, they brought me a glass of milk. How they misunderstood that? Okay. So, the same way, this takes a long time to become proficient, avail yourself of its uses, its powers. And then this very important line, no matter what, and we put 3 words in here for the chiu, no matter what, never crave, yearn, seek for spiritual responses. Now this I want to go into next week because it's so important. And the reason I say it's so important is even here at this particular monastery, which is a monastery in the tradition that is very much about cultivating your own mind, cultivating your own person, realizing within yourself this awakening and not seeking for it through some external power and whatnot. Nonetheless, every night there are people here who do that, who come specifically for that, who delight in that, who salivate over the possibilities of spiritual powers and these kinds of things in special states and getting them. And if you told them, if I said, next week, a monk that's been in hibernation for 20 years is coming out of hibernation. He's been in a cave up in Northern California, and he's coming here next week, and he's going to transmit the secret dharma of power to all of you so that anything you wish for you can have simply by reciting this. Now, if you're interested, just sign up online. We have a limited number of applications, blah, blah, blah. Man, believe me, the site would be flooded with people coming in for this. I'm sorry, it's true. So he says, yeah, the Buddhists said it, but the patriarchs and their disciples have cautioned against this. We're not out of the dark ages with this stuff yet. Even in the time of the 6th patriarch, you all know the story of the 6th patriarch, the Chinese 6th patriarch. So Bodhidharma is considered the first Chinese patriarch. He's the one that came from India to China, and then there were 5 consecutive ones, and Hongren was the 5th, and then Hongren passed it on, in a sense, confirmed the understanding of the 6th patriarch called Huineng. So he received a confirmation that he understood the teaching. Now some people say he got transmitted the Dharma. He got a Dharma transmission in a secret room. And so the minds at that time were so hot after this secret transmission that they were hanging around at the fifth patriarch's way place, waiting and waiting to see who was going to get it. And it was symbolized by getting the robe and the bowl. So the robe and the bowl from the fifth to the fourth to the third had been passed down as a symbol, okay? As a symbol that you had the realization. It wasn't like once you got the real and bowl, it was like, whoa, like the movies and the lights go off and everything. You go, whoa, you know, you're shaking with the energy and the lights come down and you get it. And then whoever gets that robe and bowl, like Frodo's ring, gets the energy. It's not. It was a symbol that it would have been passed along to you. So contentious by the time of the sixth patriarch was this, that people were willing to kill for it. They were willing to kill for it. So when the sixth patriarch comes in, he demonstrates to his teacher that he's really fully understood the deepest teaching. The teacher says to him, you're the next one. Go on and teach and share this with everybody. As a symbol of you being this next one, I'm going to give you this robe and bowl, but don't pass it on anymore because it's going to end up killing people. And it wasn't passed on since him. Nobody knows what happened to it. Now I know where it is. No. Okay, nobody knows what happened to it. Nonetheless, he said to him when he gave it to him, he said, now, you've gotten it. I want you to get out of here by night. Slip into the darkness, cross the river, and disappear and hide out for 15 years. So greedy are people for this robe and bowl that they'll be after you. And no sooner had he left, and the patriarch, the fifth patriarch, to give him a head start, didn't show up for the meals or the lecture for, I think, 3 days? 2 or 3? Huh? Many days he doesn't show up. And they're all going, what's going on? Is he sick and whatnot? So basically, and the energy, you can imagine this is like, what's that movie, the thing on television, American Idol, right? So the votes are, whatever, the votes are coming, everybody's wondering who's going to get it. And they finally say, what's wrong? Are you sick? No, I'm okay. Then why haven't you been out? Well, because I bequeathed the teaching to who? And he said, the stupid one who can't write or read. And they knew immediately who it was. And so what do they do? Say, oh, I'm so happy. We're sympathetic joy that someone got it, that deserved it. Now the Dharma can go on. No, they quickly put on their sandals and chased after him with their knives to see if they could steal it from him. These are monks. These are monks. No stealing. No stealing, except the robe and the bowl. So he hides out. One catches up with him right away, a former general who's got some kung fu, right? His name's Wei Ming. Wei Ming catches up from him, and he hides in the rocks. And Wei Ming, say, come on, get out here. Give me the robe and the bowl. And he says, the robe and bowl is a token of my understanding. It's a gesture that I have an understanding. You can't take this by force. And he says, well, I don't really want to take it by force. I just want the Dharma. So the patriarch's listening. He says, okay, come on out. You really want I just want the Dharma. So he says, okay, first of all, cool down. You're sweating, you're hyperventilating, you got your hand still on your knife, and you're bulging, your veins are bulging out. Cool down. And so he sits for a long time. Now you can imagine what's in his mind. He's sitting, he's trying to cool down, he's saying, robe and bowl, I want the robe and bowl. At the same time, no, I don't want the robe and bowl, I want the Dharma. And so finally the patriarch then tells him, here's the teaching. Basically, your own mind is a Buddha, and if you clean out your own mind, immediately you'll have full realization. I'm giving you in brief. That's the secret. And so he gets it, and he understands. And he goes, wow, powerful, thank you. And then he goes, so, but what's the secret? And the sixth patriarch is going, oh, duh. Okay, I just told you there wasn't a secret. The secret is your own mind. The secret is with you. And he goes, oh. And so he starts to slowly absorb and cultivate this. That's how long. And he's there trying to get this directly. So that's, what this is all about. It's not like there's a secret out there in the mantra per se, but the secret is if you just turn the light around and illumine within. Now, that being said, I'll tell you one story, because I told a story previously about my disinclination to believe in this, given my own particular, I'm going to be nice, my own particular religious upbringing, which had me into a lot of this stuff at a very early age, and that I thought I successfully jettisoned when I went to university and entered the first Enlightenment, which is called the Western Enlightenment, rational reason and so forth. So when I encountered Buddhism, I was very disinclined, but as I explained, my own coming in was based on something having to do with a mantra and the Dave Jo in a session and so forth. So within that period of time, my first year there, towards the end of the summer, the beginning of fall, this would be 1976, the year of the American bicentennial. California had at that time been in a severe drought of 2 years going into the third year. So 74 to 75, 75 to 76 were severe droughts in California. There was rationing of water at the time. Many things were being destroyed just for lack of water. And fire was a real threat. And it didn't look like the third year was going to be any different. Now, this is before they understood whatever they understand now, which I don't know, but El Nino, blah, blah, blah. There was no explanation that they had, and it was looking like a third year, and things were really severe. And we were at the Gold Mountain Monastery one evening, and the master, my teacher, said, he said, the karma of the world is such, more and more that you will see an increase of natural disasters because of the way we abuse and misuse what's given to us. And he says, this is what's at the heart, the deepest heart of these imbalances and these calamities that come through nature. He said, if people can turn their minds around and know contentment with fewness of desires and use the resources wisely and repent of their past mistakes, things can be restored. He said, sometimes to effect this, you can use compassionate mantras to invoke the aid and the assistance of someone like Guanyin Bodhisattva, who by definition compassionately observes or listens to the sounds or the pleas or the suffering of the world. And Guanyin, interestingly, is portrayed sometimes as turning a bottle of sweet dew of moisten to help living beings. And so I heard this and I thought, where's he going with this? I mean, it made sense in some, to me it made sense in some way that there would be a relationship, but so he said, tomorrow, those of you who want to, in the afternoon, when we're done with our work and everything here, you can go to Golden Gate Park and take a statue of Guanyin Bodhisattva with some flowers and incense, put it in the middle of the park, and then just circumambulate reciting the Great Compassion Mantra with the idea of eradicating the obstacles that are preventing rain from coming. And I'm going, whoa. Well, I was thinking, whoa, that'd be cool. But I didn't really believe that it would work. But I just thought it'd be cool to be in Golden Gate Park. It was 1976. So Golden Gate Park, circumambulating, reciting, with a bunch of people, monks and nuns and everybody. So I thought, okay, I'll go along too. So we did. We went to Golden Gate Park on that day. And there we were, circumambulating. And so soon the word got out that, a lot of things were going on in San Francisco at this time that attracted camera people, and this was one of them. So somebody said, there's something going on in Golden Gate Park again. Is it a being? Is it a concert? No, it's these weird guys walking around a statue, men and women, some with shaved head and robes, going blah, 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 blah. And so the camera crew came out, and I can remember she interviewed one of the monks. She didn't want to interview anybody who was normal. That was not eye-catching. So she chose the most eccentric-looking monk, who got before the camera, and he's got his beads going like that. And she said, well, what are you doing? Well, we're invoking the name of Guanyin Bodhisattva in the hopes, and he went through the whole thing, so that rain will come and la, la, la. And she said, oh, rain. She said, have you seen the weather report? He says, no. She said, the radar, the weather report, has shown no rain, no possibility of rain, not only for the past 2 years, but nothing in the next 30 days even. There's not a cloud on the horizon. She said, take a look. And of course, you look up, it was completely blue. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. And she says, so you still think you got a chance here? And he says, well, we're going to be really sincere and we're just going to do it. She says, well, good luck. And then she sort of snickered and smiled when he moved away. And she says, doesn't that beat all? But this is San Francisco. And so that was it. So we recited, and I was looking, nothing. So, a big bright moon comes up, and I'm going, oh, heck. So we go back to the monastery at 6 o'clock, and we have the evening lecture, and nothing's said about it. And I'm going, okay, there goes my faith in the mantra. And so I would take the bus back home, back to Berkeley at that time. I got home about 9:30, and I'm still looking. Now I can see all these constellations and stars, and I say, okay, scratch that idea. So I go to bed. About 10:45, I'm woken up by thunder. And I'm thinking, those neighbors again are having a party. And I look, and then there's lightning outside the window. I'm going, oh my God, lightning and thunder. And pretty soon, the rain starts coming down. First a pitter, pitter, patter, pitter, pitter. And then just a downpour. And I'm going, whoa. And I look at my clock. So I turn on the news. It's 11 o'clock. And so goes 11, got the news, and then get to the weather. And we have a special report tonight from our reporter at large, Mary so-and-so, who is with us today now at Golden Gate Park, where she was a few hours earlier. Let's tune in. Mary, are you there? Mary's got this yellow thing on in her boots, and she's there, and she says, believe it or not, I was here earlier, and then they show the clip back, when this group from this Gold Mountain Monastery were reciting for the goddess of great compassion or something to make it rain, and she said, I was skeptical and so forth. She says, and now it's 11:30, and here I am. And then they point down in a puddle of water, which is above my ankles now. And she said, strange indeed. And the meteorologist said, well, Mary, I don't know how to explain it because our Doppler radar showed nothing whatsoever, and now it's completely covered in this cloud. And he said, it's not raining in Los Angeles, and it's not raining up in Oregon. It's just raining in the whole San Francisco Bay Area right now. And she says, strange indeed, and closes out. And that was the thing for the night. And, of course, I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I go, whoopee, whoopee. I made it rain, So what you make of that, I don't know. We did go into the third year of drought after that, but that was that night was probably 2 to 3 inches of rainfall in one time when there hadn't been any. And the master just didn't say anything the next day. He said, how these things work is inconceivable. But if you're really sincere, you have an interaction with nature. And mantras are some of the means you can use to affect these kinds of changes. So you could say it's not very scientific. We didn't do it above a blind, and we didn't have other people out there reciting, a Rolling Stones song to see if that had any effect. But I relate my own personal experiences. There's many more, but there's just one I relate tonight to say how my opinion started to change about these mantras over the years as I got more exposed to how they could be used. So, as they say in Chinese, xiang yi xiang, think it over, or don't. But I just thought I'd share. Next week, though, because I asked some of my students last night to do the homework, because the line is, no matter what, don't seek, yearn, crave for spiritual responses. So I said, if any of you just go online on the website and you can download some sites out there that seem to be catering to this love, craving for spiritual responses, send me. I got quite a few today. A very interesting afternoon, just clicking on these links to sites that are actually selling spiritual awakening. So next week, besides going into this a little bit, we'll draw up some of these sites, and you can have a look and see what you think. And, of course, you're free to convert once you see these. But, right. But I want to illustrate that although this is an ancient text, and although the Buddha, going back 2,000-some years ago, talked about this happening in India, the current manifestations are very real and very much with us today, 2013 as we speak. And you can go onto your computer and have access to as strange and as varied approaches to this seeking as existed at the time of the Buddha or in Tang Dynasty China. So some things, it seems, never change. So that'll be next week. And we're getting close to the end of the semester, aren't we? When does the semester end? Huh? Right, so we'll be over with this class in the middle of May, and we usually take a break for the summer. So we're going to do the transference in English.
Announcement? Just a quick announcement. Let's see. Tomorrow, Dharma Master Fan will be coming up to lecture on the Avatamsaka Sutra. And anything else?
Isn't that at 7:30?
7:30. So we have a regular 7:30 lecture on the Avatamsaka Sutra, which was what Marty just mentioned. So if you want to actually get a chance to look at what he was discussing.
And then our senior nun, Hung Chur, went back to Australia. And Hung Chur is...
Oh yeah, our Brahma is coming back April 16th.
So he's en route on his way back.
Very soon.
He will regale you with stories of wallabies and kangaroos.
And spiders.
And spiders.
Lots of spiders.
By the way, we've been Skyping. Hung Chur and I have been Skyping. Yeah, neither of us have the spiritual, but we don't want to show them that we could do it without Skype. So we use Skype. And we've been working on a translation together through Skype. And he invited me. He said, well, why don't you just come over here? We'll do it together. And he knows, first of all, that I love cold climates. I don't like warm climates. And that as far as creepy, crawly things go, I think they're better in their realm and not mine. So while we're Skyping, he's there in his T-shirt and then his sash over the top with the sweat going down. He said, oh, you'd really like it here. I said, well, what is there to like about that? He said, well, it's rained nonstop for 8 days. I said, that's biblical. What is there to like about that? And then he says, oh, look. And he changes the computer, and there's a spider crawling down his wall bigger than my hand. And he's going, oh, that's Junior. He's still an adolescent. He said at night he crawls over me. You know, I was thinking, so you want me to come there for what? So I believe in Skype, believe me. Okay.
In respect to the three jewels.